Hey guys, so doing a little bit of a review today. The Honda RVF400. This is one of my favorite bikes. I absolutely love these things. They're just, yeah, it's like a big sports bike all wrapped up in a tiny little package. 400 cc's, decent amount of power, really good learner bike, awesome bike to start on. Plenty of power to play with, and you won't get bored as well, which is great. But I mean, just look at it, single-sided swing arm. Look at that. I mean, that just looks absolutely fantastic, I reckon. Side exit exhaust, carbon fiber on this one. Really nice color scheme. I love the schemes of the old 80s and 90s Hondas. The brakes on these are also pretty good. They're nothing like, say, a modern 600 or modern 1000cc sports bike, but I mean, just have a look at it. Love it. Alright, well, let's take it for a spin and see how she goes. Alright, let's get started. Honda RVF400. This is a 94 model, I think. Pretty sure it's a 94, but they're all pretty much the same. They were built from around 94 to 96. Very common for P-bladers to use these as beginner bikes because, one, they're legal. They're actually a really good bike. They're a lot of fun. Granted, if you use like a modern 1000 or a 600, they do feel slow compared to a modern sports bike, but they are an awesome bike to ride. So RVF400, 400 cc's, obviously, a V4 formation, so not an inline 4 like the CBR 250RR or most of your sports bikes like a CBR 600, CBR 1000, those kind of things. This is a V4, so it's a different layout. And I found from the V4s that I've ridden, not many, being the RVF 400, the Aprilia RSV4. I think the V4 does tend to give it a little bit more torque down the bottom end. Being 400 cc's, this isn't a very torquey motor, but I think the V4 does make up for that. And it still revs quite well. It still revs out to about 14.5, 15,000, which is enough, makes a nice noise. In my opinion, this is one of, if not the best sounding sports bikes out there. I absolutely love the sound. I wish I could get this. Go on, Honda, make an RVF800 or RVF1000 in a sports bike. I'll be all over that. And they've also got a really good whine, the RVFs, and my understanding is that's in part to the gear-driven cams, which give you that whine higher up in the revs. Oh my god, the handling on this thing is just absolutely, oh, it really is. It's perfection, I gotta tell you. Oh, that handling, Jesus. It's just such a friendly bike to ride. Like, it's very easy, it wants to turn quickly, and it's very sure-footed. Some bikes you ride, if they turn very quickly, then they might not be so confidence inspiring, but this thing is just An absolute gem. Okay, I'll try to give you a bit of the sound coming out of the corner. Hey, did not fucking see me. Didn't see me at all. Lucky I was paying attention. Little bit of brake. Oh my god, that turns well. Just the feel of this thing through the corners, it's just so, it's really predictable, and you just place it where you want to go. It always holds the line, and it's very forgiving. It feels like, although you don't want to really be doing this too often, it feels like mid-corner it feels like mid-corner you can almost adjust the thing. Like if you want to tighten your line mid-corner, you lean it in a bit more. It's just such a peach of a bike to ride. And I've got a lot of time riding RVF400s, and I actually owned one and raced one quite frequently. I had one for about, I want to say 3 to 4 years. I had an RVF400, not too dissimilar to this. My one had a bit more work. It had an exhaust system, a louder exhaust system than this, which really wakes them up, and it does help you with that top end power. And mine had rejetted carbs and things like that, and really you can actually get good power out of these, believe it or not, for a 400 if you just reject the carbs correctly and get a nice free-flowing exhaust and muffler to match, a little end can. You can make around 65 rear wheel horsepower. It's pretty good, and when you're on your L's or your P plates, 65 horsepower feels like, you know, it feels like enough, definitely. To give you an idea, your average CBR 250RR, which are, you know, they're kind of like the holy grail for a lot of learners. They love those, and I had one of those too. Great bike, but one of those probably makes, you know, a well-running one makes about 45 rear-wheel horsepower. A good running RVF 400 quite comfortably will make around 65 rear wheel, which is absolutely perfect for the track, because with that kind of power, you're not gonna, thought he was gonna run me over, you're not going to overwhelm the rear tire, and you can come out of corners, like say at Eastern Creek, which is the closest racetrack for me, coming out of the final turn onto the main straight, you can be third gear absolutely flat. Like when I mean flat, I mean pinned. You can be full lean, pinned over, full throttle, and the bike doesn't care. It literally just doesn't care. It just gets on with the job. It hunkers down, it gets through the corner, and you don't have to worry about the rear wheel spinning up or the front end coming up. You can launch this thing. When I used to take my RVF to the drags, launch it at 8,000 or 9,000 revs, slip the clutch pretty quickly, and it might hover the front wheel the tiniest bit, but they don't have a huge amount of torque, so you don't have to worry about that. And they just go. Fantastic track bike. Fantastic. Now you will, a couple of the downsides, you will get absolutely romped on the straights by anything 600 and upwards. Anything 600 and upwards will leave you for dead. But in the corners, I would rather have this. If you told me short circuit, one of these or a big 1000 or even a 600, I'd take this every time, and you'll run rings around the competition. These aren't super heavy by sports bike standards, like they're no supermoto, they're not 110 kilos or something like that, but they're about 150 odd kilos, which is quite light for a sports bike. I mean, my S1000RR, even with the titanium exhaust and lightweight batteries and carbon this and rah, that still weighs about, you know, 185, 190 kilos. But this, yeah, at 150, and just the way it is, and it's very short as well, and the short overhangs and short wheelbase, if you want to call it that, just gives it this lovely tip in to corners, and it's just so quick on its feet. If you were a big guy, you know, 6 foot or something like that, you would be very cramped. But if you're, you know, a smaller guy or a learner rider, fantastic bike. These are really built for anyone up to about 75, 80 kilos. That's the ideal weight for a rider on one of these. I don't know if you can hear that. It makes some nice pops and crackles on the overrun. They kind of range anywhere from 4,000 for an absolute heap. At $4,000, I would not want to touch one at that price. They can go anywhere up to $7,000 for a really nice, well-running one. You know, good nick, clean condition. This one's kind of in between there. But you get a good running one. Oh my god, they are good. So yeah, about, you know, between kind of $5,500 to $6,500. It's kind of the sweet spot I've found for RVFs. It seems to be, you can get one that's, you know, runs well in quite good nick for that kind of money. If you've got your eye on a couple of RVFs and one of them's $5,000 and it's just an absolute pile, and then you can spend $500 or $1,000 more for one that you ride and it just feels perfect and rides nice and it doesn't splutter. You know, the jetting's right on the carbs. Just do it. Don't be a tight ass. Just spend the extra $500 or $1,000, because what will happen is, if you don't spend that extra $500 or $1,000 on the right bike, you'll end up buying something that is just a headache and you won't want to ride it. And no one wants to, like, look, I like working on bikes, it's all fun, but no one in their right mind wants to spend their Saturdays and Sundays and weekends and whatnot fixing a bike that just runs like crap. You don't want to ride a bike that runs like crap. You just want to get on there and enjoy it like this one. So yeah, that's the secret. Spend the extra $500 or $1,000 if you need to. Get a good one. Just enjoy it. Now, a small thing that I've found with all RVFs, my one that I had, this one, other ones that I've test rode, Do not run them on 98 unleaded, which is premium. Yeah, I know it sounds counterintuitive. You'd think, what, sports bike? You've got to run it on 98, you know, high compression and whatnot. Not the case. CBR 250RR, those carbureted bikes, great. Run them on 98, runs perfectly. Run it on 95, makes no difference. They run the same. An RVF400, if you run them on 98 fuel, what will happen is it actually ends up screwing with the jets and the carburetor as a whole, and what happens is it ends up clogging it up. And I had it happen on mine stupidly. I didn't know. How was I to know? Bought the bike, put 98 in it like I did with all my other bikes, you know, my CBR 250RR that I had before that. Put 98 in it, and I'd say within half a tank of running that 98 through it, it just started spluttering and surging and not running right. And a lot of people can't work it out, and then, you know, they put in a tank of fuel, they ride it, the bike's been riding great, and then they put in their first tank of fuel, put in 98 like you would think to do, and the bike just runs like crap. And then they end up having to take it to a mechanic because they're not sure what's wrong, and it costs you hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Best thing with these is only put 91 unleaded or 95 unleaded in them. Anything more than that, and I can almost guarantee you that they will end up running like crap, whether it's from the first tank or the second tank. Plus 91 and 95 are cheaper anyway, so I mean, it doesn't cost you anything extra. It ends up saving you money actually. Now, maintenance on these, like I said, you get a good one, there is no maintenance. All you have to do is, like any other bike, do your normal oil changes. I always do them at 5,000 kilometers, which I think is about 3,000 miles or earlier. I'm OCD like that. You can't cause any additional damage by changing the oil earlier, so why not do it? Yeah, maintenance on these, great. You know, all you need, fuel. The only costs really are like a normal bike: fuel, tires, service on these. All it's going to cost you, you can do it yourself, they're so easy. Just take the fairings off. Fuel filter will cost you like $15-20. The oil will probably cost you, you know, $30 to $50. I would recommend, don't be a tight ass on the oil or the filter. If you can spend $10-20 more and get a name brand like a K&N filter and, you know, some good oil, fully synthetic always, then just do it. Don't be a tight ass. Yeah, Honda, back on topic. Please build one of these, 800 or 1000, RVF800, RVF1000, whatever you want to call it, and just build them at a reasonable price. I will buy one. Now, performance specs on an RVF400, I can tell you what mine was. So very basic mods: exhaust, rejetted on a dyno, and, you know, a normal panel filter. Make around 65 rear wheel horsepower, and with that, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when I took mine to the drags, it ran a 12.9. I can't remember the mile per hour, but it was a 12.9. 12.9 is nothing to be frowned at, and it's not a slouch at all. I mean, for a P-plater or learner, something can do a 12 is just, you know, it's fantastic. It's quicker than any car you can get at that age. Now, top speed on these is, it varies, depends how well the bike runs. I've been on other RVFs where they get to 220 k's an hour, and that's it. They've got nothing else to give, but they still have revs, but they're just maxed out. The one that I had with the work done to it ran really well. I had a GPS indicated, I think it was 235 or 238, something like that, which is quite funny because if you're doing about 240 k's an hour on one of these, it's down here. It's not even on the speedo anymore, which is quite funny. That is the RVF400.